I got to play Breaking Point 3 early, F125 story mode. Let's talk about it. By now, I hope you all know, a couple of weeks ago, I got invited down to the Codemasters HQ in Birmingham to play F125 early, over 3 hours, 1 hour on my team, 1 hour for general gameplay, and the final hour was on Breaking Point 3, and I am able to show you some over-the-shoulder footage from my playtime without really spoiling anything that I saw with regards to the story. But what I can show you is a little snippet of the new state-of-the-art cutscenes that will be involved in this story mode and the new NVIDIA audio-to-face technology they're using to add more immersion in those bits when it's not a cutscene, but you still want to feel like you're part of a story. You're just watching a story unfold, even though you're actually selecting the choices in these interviews that use this new technology and are, of course, as we've said, are used in My Team career mode as well with your facility heads. But before I continue the chat about what I played personally, let's watch this trailer that's just dropped today. I'm expecting the typical EA sort of blockbuster trailer where it all looks very, very high-end and fancy. Remember, it's just cinematics and game engine footage. Obviously, the cutscenes probably actually will end up looking like what we see in this trailer. And then the rest of it will be a little bit, obviously, not as high-end with the actual, you know, in-game rendered stuff. But should be better with the new face tech, like I said.
What are you planning?
I'm just looking out for my family.
An EA Sports original story. Clearly, already, you can tell, it's still going to be all about the family dynamics of, well, we've got Devin Butler, Callie Mayer, the father, I can't remember his name, but he was an absolute arse, but also playing a very clever game. Aiden Jackson's in there. I hope we see more of Aiden in this game than we maybe did last game, because I felt like he was pushed to the sideline a little bit, and I felt like even though he was a bit linear as a character in the first story mode in F1 2021, there's more that could be told of him if you actually gave the chance and actually gave him a bit more color to the character, basically. And then we've got Casper Ackerman, who I hated at the start of the first story mode and then grew to love, of course, as we went on through.
Final day of pre-season testing here in Bahrain.
How are we looking? We're looking strong, Callie. We can start to push now, so I want you to put some pressure on the Red Bulls, okay?
All right, so maybe some pre-season testing involved, you know, in the game if they mention it audibly. The FOV here wouldn't really think anything of it. They're just going for, well, to be honest, it looks like they're going for like an F1 movie style FOV, honestly. I think they've tried maybe quite hard, even with the color grading being a bit more yellow, they're trying quite hard to lean into that maybe F1 movie pull, you know, for any F1 fans that, you know, aren't familiar with the game. They maybe see this trailer and they think, oh, this looks like the F1 movie. Maybe I should play this.
Each of you is going to have to step it up.
I really thought he knew what he was doing. Why would he risk so much?
We don't have time to rest on our laurels.
I just know that, you know what this is? This is them two cooking up some plan, and it's going to backfire so badly, or he's not going to implement it the way he wants. I can just tell.
He used to be a maverick, Dev. What happened?
Oh, he's gone corporate. Boo! Oh, as if he wasn't hateable enough. He's gone corporate. He's that meme when your bros go into corporate finance jobs and they end up... He's going to turn up in a gilet. Just mark my... gilet or a quarter zip. Mark my words. What is the earpiece? Oh, you know what? That's giving me Office vibes. You know, like in the later seasons of The Office, when corporate has a shake-up and that new guy comes along. He looks like that dweeb. He looks like that dweeb.
Threatening my career. Now, why does that feel familiar?
Oh.
Play a butler.
I wasn't. I'm not trying to.
Oh, okay. Is he going to try and kind of, you know, destabilize her career?
Can't play a butler.
And then Aiden being a little bit... Okay, I for one hope that we get to play out whatever the hell Aiden's done to maybe mince Devin the wrong way. And we know we're going to get multiple ways to play, by the way, already, where you can either pick to play as Aiden or you can pick Callie, which I'll show you actually later, a little snippet of that actual choice then.
Listen, I'm not trying to.
You know, I'd sacrifice so much for Formula One.
The GOAT!
Motorsport.
He's getting on, though, isn't it? That's proper old man vibes. That's the sweater, the shirt at home. What are we doing? Where's the T-shirt and joggers, mate?
So much for Formula One.
Motorsport aren't doing enough here.
What is it?
Brother, what's happened here? He looks like he's like an anxiety attack, cold sweats or what? What? He's got, okay, yeah, Callie's got her arm round, so clearly something really bad happens.
Beat Red Bull by copying them.
We already heard that snippet in the reveal trailer. So we're going to be going up against... They're calling out Red Bull specifically because, of course, this will be based in the 2024 season when Red Bull were the team to absolutely beat, not McLaren.
And there's contact and into the gravel.
We saw that in the reveal trailer as well. They talk about some big event happening that turns the team into turmoil. I assume it's going to be one of our drivers in Connor Sport crashing with a Red Bull, it seemed from the reveal trailer.
Ali Mayer makes history.
I think Connor Sport needs a change of direction.
Ooh, what is that change of direction going to be? It's not going to. We know it's not going to be Devin racing because we know he's completely kaput, obviously, with the what happened in story mode 2. You know, I won't spoil it completely if you haven't seen it already, but interesting. Okay, there's a few little things up in the air that, you know, are very intriguing. Like, how is this, how are they going to play this, which direction is going to go in? And obviously, for those of you who maybe don't care as much about the story mode, you might be watching this going, but for me, as I've said, I love single-player games. I play a lot of single-player games that are not racing-related. I mean, all the games I play pretty much that aren't racing-related are single-player games. I love a good story mode, basically. And that's why I love making stories in career mode. So this is like my bread and butter. I love it. I like the fact they're trying to do something different with the F1 games. And although maybe it's not everyone's cup of tea, you know, some would say maybe, oh, could they spend this effort in other areas? I think this is probably the last story mode they're going to be doing. I think they're going to end it with like a trilogy of stories, basically, like that is my hunch. So I welcome it. You know, for one last year, let's get a good story mode, and I'm going to enjoy playing it. I always did in the first and second one, and those of you who did tune in enjoyed watching it. So I'm looking forward to it. There's a lot of question marks that I'm already itching to find out. But let's now talk a little bit more about some details we know from the deep dive blog on the F125 website, and also then just my time playing the game for literally 1 hour, so really not that much. But so from the deep dive, they say we're shaking things up once again as you'll play out multiple perspectives of a new story. No longer a minnows team, Connor Sport, under new ownership of Davidoff Butler, find themselves fighting against the best on the grid during the 2024 season. Obviously, that's going to be Red Bull, but it's finally that story where we get to see them go for the championship, which is, I think, a lot of people were itching for that in story mode 2, in Breaking Point 2, but it wasn't the right time if they were planning to do a trilogy. And they go to say, with talent and determination on their side, however, in the wake of a dramatic event, which we already know is probably going to be that incident with a Red Bull at Spain, I think it was in the reveal trailer. I would have shown it by now on screen, but I think that from memory, that's what it was about. And you'll have to see if you've got what it takes to steer Connor Sport to championship glory in 2025. Through state-of-the-art motion-captured cutscenes, heart-stopping on-track gameplay, and rebalanced difficulty options that appeal to novice and veteran players, this story is yours to play out. With very limited testing, I was unable to really put the AI to the test to see how much harder that last new hardest mode is, but my understanding from speaking to the devs and playing what I did would be basically it's going to be Breaking Point 2, and then the hardest one is now the second hardest in this lineup. And then, of course, we know once you finish the story, you can develop Connor Sport's legacy beyond Breaking Point, because for the first time, they're now allowing you to put the Connor Sport story team into either my team, and you can play as the manager of Connor Sport, taking them over, you know, obviously racing with both Callie and Aiden, because now we know in my team career mode, both drivers are there. Or you can do driver career mode, so you can actually add them in as the 11th team on the grid, and then technically, I think, you can then actually drive as yourself driving for another team, or driving as another driver at another team, or you can drive as one of them for the driver career mode in Connor Sport. We know now in this version of the story mode, you can now change change each chapter between the person you're playing, so you get a different perspective of that. So at the start of each chapter, basically, or going into the race, effectively, because obviously, like in Breaking Point 2, there are those vistas and moments where you're doing some management. You're probably going to be, you know, playing as Casper or Devon, maybe, and doing those choices. And then when you go into the race, where you would assume the role as one of the drivers, you pick Aiden or Callie. Both have a different story to tell. So it could actually end up being you have a unique conclusion to not only that chapter, but then also the entire story. As I understand it, there's going to be a unique story conclusion depending on who you've chosen along the way for different things, and like objectives basically will also change. So the objective might be like a higher position for a certain driver, or it might be, you know, you've stumbled into an event where you've crashed with someone, or the car's gone wrong and it's your job to make up the places, for example. I'm just kind of spitballing of giving you an example of how that might work, but it might be a very different experience. Like, you might have a very different race, just like we see in real life in Formula One. Sometimes teammates have a very different experience. Sometimes they're sweeping through the field to go for the win, and then sometimes they're trying to make up from bad qualifying. Like, it's just, it can go either way. Now, moving on to the enhanced performance capture from NVIDIA Audio to Face, I was really impressed, and I actually really liked this new tech on the show. We've showed it to you before on the channel when we talked about My Team career mode and the use there, but now having a bit more of a focused look on Breaking Point. Remember in Breaking Point 2, when we had these interviews, it was always over the shoulder, and it felt a little bit... It wasn't like the most immersive thing ever. It was a little bit disjointed. Like, the animation of, I think it was Natalie Pinkham, wasn't always amazing, let's be honest. But this one now should be a step up. It's, you know, could still be, you know, obviously you wouldn't aim for even higher, but I think compared to what we had in the previous story mode, it's a really good upgrade for that, to get that immersion then of, whilst you're choosing the options and then actually seeing the character you're playing as speak them to the screen. I will say, as I touched upon and I mentioned the vistas, you know, managing like the team, you know, probably playing as Casper or Devon or whatever, they are very, very similar, if not in some regards the same as they were in Breaking Point 2 in terms of a lot of the assets have probably been pulled over from Breaking Point 2. So when you play Breaking Point 3, if you play 2, it will feel very familiar in terms of the structure. You have, like, you know, the management bit, cutscene, more management, maybe a phone call, then you go into a race, the race drama happens, cutscene may be involved with the race or not, then you end off with an interview that gives you more context, then maybe ending with a cutscene or a phone call, and then it's chapter end, and then repeat for how many ever chapters there are. I hope and assume there's going to be the same amount of chapters in Breaking Point 3 as there were in 2, because I think 2 was a very good amount. It was a bit of a longer story than Breaking Point 1, but wasn't too long, didn't drag on too long. There was enough time there with the story, with the characters, to have these different arcs going on. You know, we had the twist in Breaking Point 2 with Devon racing initially, and then the twist of his, you know, issue, and then he couldn't race anymore. And clearly from the trailer, you know, there are going to be other obstacles for Devon to come over in terms of him as a manager. There's going to be obstacles for Callie to overcome, with friction between her and her brother. Aiden as well, maybe feeling left out or trying to get in the middle of it. I'm sure Casper's going to be in there fighting Davidoff, fighting Devon, and maybe being on Aiden's side, knowing him a bit better. So there's going to be a lot of different arcs, I think, that we're going to see. Maybe like mini stories that resolve themselves over like 3 chapters, let's say, and then obviously an overarching story, which will be just trying to win the World Championship with Connor Sport versus, well, we assume it's going to be Red Bull, because they're the ones that were focused on in the trailer. So I could maybe talk a little bit more about this story or what I maybe saw, but I've been told not to try and spoil anything. And to be fair, I also don't want to, like, you know, try and reference something that I maybe get wrong down the line, because now that I recall it, it's, you know, been 2 weeks, so I could get some info wrong. So I'll leave it at that, with the kind of uncertainty or question marks about what the story could be. I will say, hopefully I won't get in trouble confirming this, but the line in the trailer about pre-season testing, you do actually get to do some pre-season testing inside of this story mode. So if you've ever wanted to know what having a pre-season testing would be like in career mode, you might just have to play the story mode to get a little taster of what a pre-season test could look like in a career mode, because it is in the story mode. I really hope I don't get in trouble for saying that, because I think it is actually a juicy little tidbit that doesn't affect the storyline. So hopefully I'm okay and I don't get nuked by EA or Codemasters very, very soon for saying that. But that has been my experience with playing Breaking Point 3 early for just 1 hour. I'm just talking through the deep dive blogs. I do know that in May, I think at some point I will get to preview the story mode for you guys and kind of play through the first 2 chapters a bit earlier to give you those 2 chapters and episodes earlier. So look out for that on the channel. If you're new around here, do get subscribed for that down the line. Of course, when I actually get hands-on with F125 at home on my own setup, and I can really test out the AI, which is still the biggest thing that I'm focusing on. Is nothing else matters for me in the testing of F125 come May in the preview build. It's going to be all about the AI. So get locked in for that, and you know, I'll be straight on it as soon as I can. But if you guys have enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.